In this video, we'll go through the finer points of how to replace the left front axle seal in a 4x4 Chev truck. We'll demonstrate how you should remove and reseal the adjacent vent cover, and we'll illustrate how the threaded adjusters are designed to set ring gear backlash and carrier bearing preload in a front differential. Well, this is the left front axle seal on a 2000 Suburban. I'm draining off the differential fluid. Now, those of you who remember from 7 years ago, I did a video showing how to do this procedure. And it's still actually a pretty good video. And so I'm not going to repeat everything that's done there, but you'll see that with all this oil here, clearly I've got another leak. And so I'm going to do that procedure again. I'm going to do two things differently. Is 7 years a good length of time for a seal? Well, I suppose so, but I'm going to go back to the OEM seal to try and give me a little longer length of time. And secondly, I'm going to spend some time fixing the vent plug up above, just to make sure that the vent is not leaking as well. This is engine degreaser. So there's no doubt that the hardest part of this procedure is usually getting this little axle stub out. And the last time I did this, I was tapping on it for about 15 minutes, and eventually it just suddenly seemed to fall out. It wasn't so much a matter of how hard I hit, it was just how I somehow got it. And I think it's because that clip in there slips by gravity, and it's got to be in the right situation to let loose, so you have to kind of wiggle and tap. Okay, I've got that stub out, and just like the last time, it seems like it waits for you to cuss about 25 times before it comes out. And you're sitting there laying on your back wondering how long it's going to take and wondering if you're going to have to split the case. And then all of a sudden, just with a light tap, all of a sudden, boom, it falls out and you wonder why it was so difficult. And again, this time, just like the last time, getting it out was not about how hard you hit it. It's about rotating it and getting that clip just in the right position, because I think the clip slides to one side and then it binds. And so you just have to keep tapping and get lucky. You're doing it blind. You just get lucky and suddenly it's lined up and boom, a little tap and it's out. Now my next challenge is to get this vent tube off, because I want to take the vent off and reseal that as well. I think the vent may be leaking as well on top of the seal, but of course I'm going to deal with both. So let's get that vent tube off. You can see the vent tube up higher, and that's attached to a nut. No, this is too small. There. So the tube is off. And now I'm going to put a wrench on this socket and spin this whole big plastic donut out. This is a little peephole to allow you to set your backlash. You can see the ring gear through that hole, so we're going to take that off now. I don't have a deep enough metric socket, so I switched to my SAE. This is 15/16. Seems to be the right size. You'll have to do the math if you've got a deep metric. This is not very tight at all. I wonder if this has been leaking. There's a TSB about this problem in the dealer's service manual, saying that you should take this off and seal it with Teflon tape, presumably the type that fits with oil and gas. And so that's what I'm going to do here. There it is there. Okay, here's this plug. Now, interestingly enough, this thing has to be large so you can look at the ring gear and adjust your backlash. But look at this little thing on the end here. All this thing seems to be is just a little protector to prevent the vent tube from sucking something up and clogging it off. And you can see the contact line, and this is obviously really poor. And so we're going to have to seal this up. But we can't seal it up with something permanent or something that would be really difficult to get off, because that could be a major problem for us. After all, they need to be able to undo this, and it's plastic, and so it can't take a whole lot of torque. And so I'm just going to use some Teflon tape designed for oil and gas, and we'll clean this all up. I should have done this the first time when I did the seal the first time, but it actually worked fine, so I don't think the seal was leaking when I first had it. But once you're in here, you may as well just do it all. Here's a look at the inside of the vent opening. To measure backlash, you use a dial indicator with a flexible articulating arm that allows you to get in there and make the measurement at right angles to the gear tooth. But practically speaking, most of us don't have that kind of specialized equipment. The dealer's workaround for those of us with conventional dial indicators is to measure backlash on the pinion yoke and then divide that number by 2, to estimate the backlash at the ring gear. Here's a closer look with a GoPro. You can see the carrier, 2 spiders, and 2 end gears. It's a typical open differential. Well, with big diameter, a plastic nut, poor access, and Teflon tape, the chance of cross-threading this is really high. So I back it up first. I get it rotating backwards until I feel it drop into the notch of the threads, and then just very carefully thread it forward with my fingers. Now let's remove the seal. Notice the tip of my screwdriver is at 12 o'clock. In a minute I'm going to show you the locking tab underneath at 9 o'clock. A word of warning, if you snag that locking tab with your screwdriver, you could break it, and you'll end up having to split the case to repair it. So stay away from 9 o'clock. Here's a look you don't often get. Do you know what those 12 trapezoidal bumps are, arranged in a circle around the axle tube? Those bumps are teeth for the left threaded adjuster used to adjust backlash and preload on the differential carrier bearings. In their wisdom, Chrysler designed 2 special tools to turn those adjusters. The one for the left side is shown here. It would be easy to make that with a short length of flat plate and a couple of notches and bends. Here's the right-sided tool. Our friend Eric O at Southmade Auto made one similar to this last tool with a 32mm thin-walled socket, welding on 3 ribs of 1/4-inch key stock. He's got an excellent video showing how to do that procedure on his channel. In case anybody wants to get a head start at making their own tool, I put up this wood screw as a yardstick. It measures exactly 2 inches from end to end. Now, what's that extra bump at the 9 o'clock position? That's a sheet metal locking tab. They're little T-shaped tabs of sheet metal installed before the thread adjuster is installed from the inside. When your backlash and preload is perfect, you bend that tab down to lock the adjuster in place. The thing about sheet metal is you only get a few tries before it breaks. If that happens, you'll have to remove and split the case. It's not as simple as just unscrewing the adjuster. Notice that this adjuster has a shoulder on it to generate preload, so the adjuster itself has to be installed from the inside of the case. Closer to the center, you can see the needle bearings that comprise the outer shaft bearing, and that one can be removed with the adjuster in place using a slide hammer. All right, here's the old seal, and you see it's got a metal backing. I had a guy on my last video say that I had the seal in backwards, and of course there's no way you can get these mixed up. The metal is in the back part, it's on the part next to the gears. This is the outside right here, and it looks fine. I don't see any big issues. I got this one from Napa. I put a tiny rim of RTV on it. You can barely see. And here it is here. And it looks a bit different. With the amount of effort to get this seal out, you may as well go with the OEM, in my opinion. I think a brighter question would be the question as to whether or not the leak was from the vent tube, and that's a much more difficult one to answer. I think if you end up having to go here, you should fix both. Okay, well I'm going to cut it off there. For more details, go to that first video. Now, one of the things you notice when you drive the Suburban is how tightly it turns in a parking lot. It's got a really tight turning radius. And so I suppose we should expect that axle seal issues will be a weak point in the design. In any case, thanks a lot for coming by. I'd love to hear any comments.